How's it going, Twitch? My name is Skull, and on behalf of East Asia Soft, welcome to today's stream. Today's Sunday, which means it's the I get to play whatever I want day, and today I am continuing my playthrough of Venus Improbable Dream. A really short, but really beautiful visual novel. So, yeah, I'd be surprised if I was still playing this by the end of November. Nice short VN. Let's try that again, because I hit the wrong button. Off to a great start. Okay, try that again. We need to load. Need to load a game. I'll remember this time. There we go. Here we go again. Striding unsteadily down the corridor towards the music club room, I remind myself with disdain that this was, in fact, my own idea to come back here. What on earth has happened to me over the last couple of days? I guess curiosity is mostly to blame. I couldn't help but wonder about Haruka, and now here I am, about to put myself through yet another arduous and nerve-wracking group practice. Also, I could talk to her afterwards. Still, I do kind of relate to her in some way, so I guess it's natural for me to want to know why she does this every day. Huh? On the surface of the door leading into the club room, an A4 piece of paper has been stuck, a note written upon it in rather neat handwriting. Due to an urgent commitment, I am unable to attend today's music club meeting. Club activities will resume on Monday. It's signed at the bottom by Kudo-sensei. Well, that's unexpected. I'm getting myself all riled up for nothing in the end. However, just as I'm turning to leave, a now familiar sound reaches my ears, incredibly distant but still audible. You've got to be kidding me! I push my way into the club room. I'm met with pitch black darkness. Where the hell are the lights in here? After fumbling around and feeling the wall like a weirdo, I find the light switch. The sudden intensity of the light hits my eyes uncomfortably, but as I adjust, I find myself enjoying the emptiness of the room. It's a much less intimidating place to be when no one is here. My ears picking up on the flute again, I make my way towards the corridor. She can't really be in here, can she? I suppose if she's blind, then she might not be able to tell the difference between how the clubroom usually is and now. But still. Taking a breath, I push the door open. She really is here. The lights are off in here too, as if they had been in the main club room. If I weren't so tense, I'd probably laugh my ass off at the situation. For a moment, she simply continues to play, and I'm surprised that she hasn't reacted to my barging in, though the flute is pretty loud. I figure I should turn the lights on before doing anything else. I start swatting at the wall again, eventually finding the switch that I'm looking for. The sharp click of the switch flipping resounds across the room, announcing my presence to Haruka. She stops playing and turns around straight away. It's me! My nerves cause me to omit my name, but I guess she recognizes my voice as a look of acknowledgement appears on her face. Akane, are you not practicing with the group? Trophy. She looks in my direction, evidently confused. I wonder how she's going to take the news. Well, club is canceled today. Huh? She stares past me, slightly nonplussed. Is that why it's so quiet in the other room? This is pretty funny. Yeah, there was a note on the door. Kudo-sensei has something else he needs to do. Her eyes wander, and I can practically see the cogs whirring in her mind as she takes it in. My amusement fading, I realize that she might feel very self-conscious about making a mistake like this. I prepare myself to console her in whatever inadequate way I can if she ends up getting panicked about it. However, the opposite happens. Am I alone in here? Her face brightens a little, so I guess she's starting to see the funny side. Yeah, I only came in because I heard your flute. The lights weren't even on. A few seconds of silence follow, and then she raises her hands to her face, covering her mouth as she giggles quietly. It's an awkward wooden laugh, but she still overcomes her own nerves enough to let it slip. I must have looked so stupid. I'm not gonna lie, she kinda did. But I'm not gonna tell her that. Instead, I give out a small laugh of my own, tickled by the funny situation. The lighter atmosphere swerves to quell my tension a little. Haruka then turns to the chair to her left, reaching out to feel for the open flute case which is resting on top of it. After locating it, she places the flute inside gently before turning back in my direction. Do you think we should leave? That's a point. We're not really supposed to be here, considering that club has been canceled. Thinking about it, though, it's not like we'd be doing anything bad if we used the room to practice anyway. It's still club-related. I think it's probably okay. She considers it for a moment and then nods in agreement. That's another silence, although it's a bit more relaxed than the first one. Then Haruka looks towards me again after seeming to think about something. By the way, I don't mind if you call me by my first name. Her cheeks turn a little pink. We don't need to be that formal. She's probably right, although it's kind of embarrassing. We still don't really know each other at all. Still, I appreciate her willingness to be on first name terms. To be honest, it surprises me. Alright, you can do the same with me then. She nods, seeming somewhat pleased, but then her expression drops, looking regretful. I hope I don't... well... I'm agonizingly familiar with struggling to get your words out. I give her all the time she needs to continue. I'm sorry if I don't look at your face. My heart flutters a little at the mention of my face. I know it was just a figure of speech, but it still gives me a pang of panic. Glancing up at Haruka's downcast expression, I realize that my lack of response might have made her feel worse. I just can't always tell where people are, to look at their eyes when they're talking to me. She hangs her head in shame. I recognize that sinking feeling that I can tell she's having right now. I can read it on her face. There's no need for her to apologize for something like that. There's no way she could be at fault. Don't be. It's okay. I really don't mind. Don't mind gets nowhere close to describing how I feel. The fact that Haruka is oblivious to the flaw that torments me about myself is the only reason I'm able to have these conversations with her. She gazes towards me again, seeming unsure about my words of comfort. Seriously, it's fine. I don't really like people staring at me anyway. She softens at this, seeming to relate to it. Me neither. She nods to herself for a moment, seeming to be convincing herself to trust my word. How tall are you? For a moment I wonder why she wants to know, but then I realize that knowing my height would probably help her get an idea of where my eyes are, if she was to try to look more directly at me. I'm not that much taller than you, a couple of inches probably. She nods again, adjusting her focus and raising her head slightly to implement this new information. She's a little closer to looking at me properly, although it's still not quite there. It's close enough for me, even if she can't see. We both fidget simultaneously out of topics of conversation, and it gives me a chance to remember why I came here today in the first place. I wanted to ask her why she stays in the music club. Feeling awkward, as though this might be too personal a question to ask, I stay quiet for a moment before plucking up the courage to speak. Can I ask you something? She seems to grow a little tense at the sudden interrogation. Okay? Praying that I don't upset her for whatever reason, I pose my question. Why are you in the music club? I realized that I asked her this very clumsily. I could have put it in a much more diplomatic way, but instead I just blurted it out. I mean, you don't join the group. Her eyes lower, and I immediately start backtracking in some lame attempt at damage control. I totally get why. I don't like working in the group either. I just wonder... It's hard to know how to word this without it seeming somewhat accusatory. The last thing I'm trying to do is suggest that it's not worth her coming here. Well, you must get something from it personally. My gaze hits the floor and I begin to feel terrible. I've probably offended her. There's yet another period of silence, and when she speaks again, I'm expecting her to chastise me for seeming insensitive. Luckily, I'm wrong. I do. Daring to peek at her again, I see that her demeanor has changed. Her whole energy seems lighter. This might sound a little strange since I struggle to be around other people, but I've always wanted to perform. She wrings her hands slowly, seeming shy about what she's telling me, but nevertheless doesn't stop. Music has been important to me for a long time. As soon as I started hearing it, I really wanted to be able to play it myself. I don't think I can join the rest of the club members. She pauses for a moment, looking conflicted and a little sad. And though I can't fully know the true weight behind what she's thinking, I can still understand her point of view a little. But I'd like to do it myself. That's why I came here. To keep practicing. And that maybe one day I might be able to do it. You mean perform on stage? To an audience? Yes! I know it's stupid. I can see why she thinks that it's a futile goal. People like us aren't really designed to be put under a spotlight. Despite this, I don't want her to talk badly about herself. It's not stupid. I'm not very good with words at the best of times, so I struggle to say anything else. However, it seems as though what I'd managed to splutter out has still hit the mark, as Haruka's expression brightens again. Thanks. I watch as she gets a somewhat far-off look in her eyes. I can't tell what she's thinking about, but the way she smiles is very striking. This is the most relaxed I've seen her. Whatever's going through her mind must make her genuinely happy. It's a dream, I guess. The dream I've had for a long time. Even while just talking about music, she seems so at peace, as though she's forgotten about her anxieties and issues. The calmness of her reverie seems to permeate through the air, causing me to feel somewhat serene, too. The nervous waves that permanently course through my body are still there as always, but they're just ever so slightly muted right now. Hi, Lamb. How are you doing? What's that emote, burrito? Neither of us speak for a few moments, apparently content to just absorb the tranquil atmosphere in the room, but eventually Haruka turns her more directly towards me. Sorry, I probably talked too much. It's okay. I don't mind listening. It's much easier than speaking. Haruka smiles a little in response. My eyes averting for a second, I catch a sight of the clock on the wall. It's not exactly late, but I should probably leave Haruka to her practicing if it's that important to her. Game seems cozy. It's a very nice light VN. I should probably go. I don't want to keep you from practicing. Okay. Thanks for talking to me. Sorry if I weirded you out. I say this because it was probably quite random and forward for me to suddenly ask her about her motives for staying in the club. You didn't. Well, that's a relief. Okay. Well, have fun. She nods in reply, and I head back towards the door. At least I didn't have to play piano today. Kakeru! It feels odd to hear her say my name out loud like that. My first name, too. But we'd agreed on it. I retract my hand, which had been reaching for the door handle. Turning back to face her, I see from her unsettled expression that there's something else on her mind. On Monday... I see what she's getting at. I don't know what she could possibly gain from having awkward conversations with me, but if there's something about it that she enjoys, then I think I could probably keep doing this. It's not like talking to everyone else. I can come and say hi if you like. I say this so she doesn't have to continue trying to ask her question. It seems to help as her shoulders relax a little and she looks up towards me again. Yes, all right. That's decided then. I've already committed to coming back to the next music club meeting on Monday, as well as talking to her again. My life has taken a serious turn. Okay, I'll see you on Monday then. She nods, seeming somewhat pleased, and I nod back, not sure of why I'm doing this. I open the door, my legs feeling a little wooden as I exit the room. It doesn't take me long to leave, retracing the route I take every day to and from school. My mind begins to fill with mundane thoughts, such as what might be for dinner and how long my homework is going to take me. Mixed in with them, however, is the long conversation I just had with Haruka. Well, it was long for people like us. A dream that she's had for a long time. I don't think I've ever had anything like that. No burning passion or far-reaching goal. If anything, my only ambition in life has been to go unnoticed. Pretty much the opposite of most people my age. I think Haruka might want something similar when it comes to everyday life, at least. Neither of us like being around other people, and new situations make us panic. It seems as though we both enjoy a bit of invisibility. It's quite nice to know that there's someone who actually understands what I go through every day, more or less. However, there are little glimpses of something else in Haruka that I don't have. From the way she's spoken to me so far, I can tell that she definitely has more confidence than I do, even if it's only a little. The fact that she has a dream like that in the first place is proof of that. It must be a massive conflict for her, though. Wanting to do something that you don't dare put into action. I definitely couldn't live like that. I gave up wanting anything a long time ago, and life has been a lot simpler since. It's a depressing way to live, I know, but if you don't have goals, then you can't fail to meet them. That's really bad. I find myself shaking my head at my own apathy. In a way, Haruka could be in the same position as me. She could see the world as bleakly as I do. And yet she doesn't. She keeps working towards something that will probably never happen. For what reason? To say that at least she tried? I sigh heavily, unable to truly wrap my head around her persistence. However, I have to admit that while it's almost maddening in its futility, there's also something admirable about it. Fighting against your fears in order to achieve something you never thought would be possible, that's the kind of stuff that heroes in anime and movies do, although I guess ordinary people do it too. People like Haruka. People like me? Could I ever do something like that? My instinct is to scoff incredulously at the notion. There's no way the invisible man is ever going to throw himself into the middle of a crowded room and put himself on display. Although, having said that, I've kind of already done it twice now. Yeah, Lamb, hopefully not. Even though I perform appallingly, I'd attended 2 music club meetings and done my best to play along with everybody else. I guess that technically means I could do it again. I could actually try one more time, genuinely attempt to improve my piano playing and contribute to the group, as opposed to dragging it down. I'm clearly not in love with the piano like Hodoka seems to be with the flute, but at the same time, from my basic experience in private lessons, I do know that it feels quite cool to be able to play a piece properly. Alliteration. Fumbling around and messing it up is soul-crushing, but getting it right is a good feeling. But is it good enough to pursue? Is the satisfaction of playing a piece well worth putting myself through daily agony, having to be part of a group that terrifies me? I can't say. The only thing I know, as I round the corner and head down the final stretch towards home, is that my mind keeps going back to Haruka. She's facing the same thing as I am, and yet she's pushing forward regardless. Feel the fear and do it anyway. I think that's how the saying goes. If she can do it, I'll give it one more try. One minute to go. Not that lunchtime is incredibly exciting, but it's probably the calmest part of my school day. No regular spot is a bench. Far out, my regular spot is a bench. Far out towards the back of the school fields. No one ever really bothers going there, as most people either eat in the cafeteria or in their schoolrooms. It's a blissful snippet of peace among the chaos. I hoist my backpack onto my shoulders, waiting for the sound I know is coming. There it is. Now I can...
Akane, a word please.
Really? Is it necessary? My stomach doing flips once again, I cross the room towards him, shakily. I really hope these talks aren't going to become a regular thing.
Akane, Kudo tells me that you've been present at the music club twice now. Will you be attending today?
His expression is the same as it always is, and yet I swear I could see a tiny glimmer of hope within it. Yes. Though my feelings had wavered between open-minded and doubtful over the course of last night, my decision had ultimately stayed the same. I'll give it one last shot.
Wonderful news. In that case, I think you'll be needing this.
He turns away from me for a moment to reach into his desk drawer, pulling out a single sheet of paper.
It's the music club's new member application paperwork. Now that you're getting used to going there, you might as well do it properly.
He hands me the paper expectantly, looking optimistically at me, as if he's just given me the most amazing birthday present in the world. I don't quite know how to react to this. Filling out and submitting this application would cement my future as an official music club member, tying me to an obligation that I would be looked down upon if I neglected. It's almost too much to think about. Matsumoto-sensei doesn't seem to notice my internal panic, however.
I'm glad you gave it a chance, Akane. This could be the start of a new chapter for you.
A chapter in a horror story by the looks of it. Well, it is October. I can't bring myself to say anything properly in reply. Give me just a second here. There we go. That flickering was bugging me on my chair. I can't bring myself to say anything properly in reply, so I simply nod, wanting to get out of the classroom. I'll probably be able to think about this more logically when I'm not so on the edge. To my relief, it seems as though our conversation has come to an end. But before either of us can move... Akane Kakaru? What the hell is going on today? I turned my neck stiffly to look towards where the sound of my name had come from. There's a boy I don't know standing in the classroom's doorway. I swivel back around to face Matsumoto-sensei, mostly out of fear, but he simply regards me with vague amusement.
Well, someone's popular today.
He walks off towards the board, leaving me to figure out this strange, unfamiliar situation alone. Nobody has ever called on me at my classroom before. It seems as though the students still left in the room are just as shocked as I am. A lot of eyes ping-pong between me and the person in the doorway, trying to figure out what our relationship is. It's incredibly uncomfortable. Struggling to force my body into motion, I stagger my way towards this mystery person. As I pass my desk, I feel my hand opening, depositing the application paper onto it. I don't really know what I'm doing, but being this nervous, all I could really do is go with it. I steal another speedy glance at this visitor, and this time I do see something vaguely familiar about him. He's one of the music club members. The oboe player? I can't remember, I just know he's a part of the ensemble. He smiles as I approach and steps back into the hallway, inviting me to follow. At least that was considerate. Escaping the stares of my remaining classmates, I round the corner of the door to where my visitor is standing. For a second, I have to remind myself to breathe. It's okay. He probably just wants to ask or tell me something. Let's not have a panic attack here. I do my best to look the guy in the eyes, to signal that I'm ready to listen. I don't quite manage it, but he seems to pick up on it anyway. Hey, sorry to call you out. Kudo-sensei asked me to give this to you. He extends another piece of paper towards me. If this is the new member application again, I might just faint. It's a list of the main songs we've been learning since the start of the year. Oh, that's not so bad, I guess. Awkwardly, I take it from him, gazing at it intensely, although I'm so jittery that I don't think I'm really reading it. It's kind of tough for you to get up to speed with us since you joined towards the end of the year. Kudo-sensei put this list together so you can look at the pieces and start learning them. It should help you out a bit. I nod, keeping my eyes fixed on the paper in my hand, although after a moment I realize that it would be rude of me not to say something. It's a nice gesture to try to help me, even if Kudo-sensei had asked him to do it. Thanks. No problem. Hope you find it useful. To my surprise, he walks away, leaving me standing there outside my classroom, motionless with anxiety. I'd expected him to try to make more conversation, but I guess I was giving off such awkward vibes that he didn't want to stretch it out. I probably weirded him out big time. Either way, I'm grateful that my obligation to talk to both him and Matsumoto-sensei is now over. I really need to go to my lunch spot and calm down. For a second, I turned back towards the classroom, remembering that I left my application form on my desk. However, as I peek into the room, a fresh burst of trepidation fills me as I see the remaining students now locked in loud conversation as they sit in groups eating their lunches. I can't go back in there. Feeling like an idiot, I swallow my inadequacy and bolt for the stairs, leaving the paper behind. I give myself some time to just sit and eat my lunch. To my relief, most of my nerves disappear once I'm back in the familiar routine. As I continue to eat, I glance down at the piece of paper sticking out from underneath my bag. The music list. I really hadn't paid attention to what had been written on it when the club member had given it to me, so, curiously, I picked it up, balancing my lunchbox on my lap as I read. There are quite a few composers on here I'd never heard of. Bach and Mozart, I know those. Everything else is completely strange to me. Oh wait, Ave Maria. That's a traditional Western song, I think. I'm not that familiar with it, though, and I don't recognize the name it's credited to. It begins to dawn on me even further that I really don't know much about classical music at all. Considering that I've started to get involved with a club that specializes in it, it's not a good thing. Sliding the list into my open bag, I go back to eating my lunch, worriedly. Eventually, I had to prise myself from my favorite spot to start heading back to class. As I make my way up to the staircase, I find it difficult to leave my troubles behind. What am I going to do about all of this? The member application form and the music list, both arriving in my hands within moments of each other. I It seems to be a sign that the universe is desperately trying to point me towards a future where I begin letting myself be around others more. Sounds kind of superstitious, but there had been a notable serendipity to it. It's like the path had been laid out before my feet, and all I have to do is walk it. Whether I dare to is a different matter. We could dare not to, we could close the game. Then he wouldn't have to. Yep, social anxiety is pretty painful. Yeah, I don't know if you saw Lamb at the beginning of the last stream, but he has some sort of a growth on his face. Like, it's not a growth. It's kind of like a tumor, and it's right here, incredibly noticeable, and people make fun of him for it. People stare at his face, and it makes him incredibly socially anxious because of it, which is why it's so easy for him to interact with Haruka, is because she's blind, so she can't see him. So she doesn't know he has a problem. So he's a lot more calm and less anxious around her. My head positively whirling, I make it to the top of the stairs, starting down the hallway that leads to my classroom. As I get closer, I pause for a minute, allowing the time to pass. Well, now you know, Lamb. This is another one of my daily rituals, to attract as little attention as possible. I like to enter the room at the very last moment when Matsumoto-sensei calls the class to order. I feel myself tense up a little in anticipation, and then the words I'm waiting for manifest themselves.
Okay, everyone, time to begin.
That's my cue. I snap into action, darting through the door and launching myself into my seat as quickly and quietly as humanly possible. The years of practice have made me quite good at it. Before anyone can look at me, Matsumoto-sensei begins his lecture, forcing everyone to pay attention. It's a good system. I remove my bag from my shoulders and take out my books and stationery, ready to distract my mind from its perpetual nervous vibration with some mundane schoolwork. However, something stares at me from on top of my desk, making such a thing impossible. The application form. The afternoon classes seem to have passed very slowly today, and I know exactly why. This application form just keeps bothering me. I hadn't put it away at the start of the first class, too preoccupied with trying to distract myself. It's been peeking out from underneath my textbooks for the last 2 hours, a constant reminder that I have a huge decision to make. This wouldn't be as big a deal for ordinary students, but for me, it's life-altering. Will I be able to handle participating in the music club every day? I almost get goosebumps at the thought. It's so far out of my usual comfort zone, it's practically on another planet. This should make my decision very easy. Knee-jerk reaction, no. I won't do it. I can't. However, every time I try to settle on this choice, the conversation I had with Haruka last week pops back into my head. It's like my fear of people and her passion for music are sitting on my shoulders like the classic angel and demon metaphor. When one tries to guide me, the other butts in. There's something that I can't deny, though. The way Haruka spoke about the reason she stays in the music club, her dream, hasn't left my mind since she told me. Seeing someone so fragile be so persistent. I glance up at Matsumoto-sensei. He has his back to the room while he talks, writing more equations on the board. Without really knowing what I'm doing, I lift up my textbook slightly, sliding the lone piece of paper out from underneath them and placing it on top. I didn't think I was finished with my internal debate yet, but as if in a trance, I watch as my hand acts on its own, picking up my pen and bringing it down to the application form. Before I know it, I've written my name on the top of it. I don't know why, but I think I'm going to do this. Perhaps it's guilt. My parents and teachers seem to want me to become more social than anything. And if I don't give this a proper try, then I'll be letting them all down. Or maybe it's Haruka. Almost everything she said that day made no sense at all. A disabled, socially anxious girl who dreams of serenading a room full of people with her music. It's almost laughable how unlikely it is that her dream will ever come true. And yet, the fact that someone like her can still hang on to the tiniest little shred of hope and keep trying to move forwards despite it all. Well, I guess it must have inspired me. By the most minuscule of margins. I don't know what's going to come of this, and I'm not sure if I'll regret it massively, but I continue to write regardless until the entire application form is complete. I still don't manage to put my mind to work at all for the rest of the class, so I simply sit there, staring at this now filled-in form while Matsumoto-sensei continues to waffle on about equations in the background. When the lesson begins to wrap up, I put everything away into the bag, only two things remaining in my hands: the form and the music list. Here we go. Leaving the room first, as always, I stalk the corridors quickly, as if moving fast enough will prevent me from changing my mind. Okay, if you're going to do this, Kakeru, just get on with it. I notice the edges of the pages in my hand beginning to tremble, realizing that it's my hands that are shaking. God, just do something! Bracing myself and not knowing which direction I'm going to go in, I start to move. I burst into the club room rather ungracefully. I hadn't meant to be so clumsy, but my nerves have turned my limbs to jelly. About half of the club members are here, the others having not arrived from class yet. There are a few glances in my direction at the way I'd blundered into the room, but it doesn't turn into a stare fest to my relief. With the adrenaline pumping through me, I almost don't notice Kudo-sensei approaching me. Akane! Glad to see you back again! His easygoing smile is just a little bit reassuring. I shuffle towards him, my breath a little ragged from what I'm about to do. My form. I stumble over the words, jabbing the application form towards him. Apparently not put off by my awkwardness, he takes it from me and looks over it for a moment. Ah, yes! So you're ready to give things a proper go then? I'm not entirely sure myself. However, I suck up my insecurities and nod, leaving myself no option but to commit. Fantastic! I'll sign this now! He goes over to his desk at the front of the room, leaning the form on it and adding his signature to the bottom to approve my membership, sealing my fate for the rest of the school year. I am an official member of the music club. The revelation leaves me feeling both alarmed and numb at the same time. It's a really jarring sensation that I can't quite understand. Struggling to shake it off, I fix my attention back at Kudo-sensei, who returns to me with a jovial expression. That's all sorted. We can start settling you in properly today. His eyes land upon the piece of paper in my other hand. Ah, is that the list I sent in to you earlier? I nod again, unable to force any words out until the throng in my head calms down. I'm glad you got it. Once you get a feel for the pieces, things will become much easier. That'll be where your free practice really comes in handy. I look at him briefly in acknowledgement, remembering how important the free practice period is from my last club session. It'll give me the time to start catching up to everyone else. As more club members filter into the room, setting up their instruments, Kudo-sensei steps back with a grin, excusing me to the piano. It's probably almost time to start. Approaching the stool I've occupied twice already, I feel a fresh sense of trepidation, knowing that it'll be my regular seat as of today. I lower myself down onto it so gingerly, it's as though it's made of needles. I can't believe I actually agreed to this. Things have strayed crazily from the path I was walking before. The path that felt the most comfortable to me, and had no unexpected events. All I can pray for as I sit there stiffly and wait for club activities to begin is that this alternate path is still comfortable enough to follow. The first half of the club session passes as it has the previous 2 times. I don't think I've made any improvements whatsoever, but then I suppose I haven't really been practicing. This is something I'm currently attempting to remedy. After calling for free practice time, Kudo-sensei had made a beeline for me, apparently eager to help me with the piece I've been joining the other members on. He's currently standing behind me, pointing out parts of the sheet music and elaborating on how the directions should be performed. It gives me another sense of nostalgia, reminding me of my old piano teacher. Funny how life seems to go in circles sometimes. After a few more run-throughs of various sections of the piece, he nods, seeming relatively satisfied. I think you should understand it more thoroughly now. Would you agree? I nod in reply. His guidance had actually helped a little bit. Good! Keep going over it, and you'll have it sounding smooth soon. He goes to leave, but then catches himself, seeming to have something else to say. By the way, how did you get on with Fujiwara? I was going to ask you on Friday, but I had to cancel on you. Recalling the dark, empty music room and Haruka's flute echoing melodically from down the corridor, I almost start to grin. It had been a funny scenario. No disasters yet! Kudo-sensei is referring to the shorter conversation we'd had, during which I apologized for scaring her, and she'd hinted at wanting to talk to me again. Our meeting on Friday was much more in-depth. In fact, Kudo-sensei should probably be thanking Haruka for having whatever crazy effect she'd had on me that made me fill out that application form, resulting in me even being here right now. Good. Talked a bit. More than I'm managing to do now. Kudo-sensei still doesn't seem offended by my awkwardness, however, apparently used to it already. I'm glad to hear it. It's nice to know that she's speaking to someone for a change. Might make her a little more confident. For a second, I almost think that he's talking about me. Considering how awful I am with people, he might as well be. He grows thoughtful for a moment before piping up again. I won't mind if you have a little chat with her towards the end of our free practices, as long as you make sure you're improving with your playing. I think it'll do both of you some good. I hadn't expected him to say something like that. I thought he'd be practically cracking the whip at my side, wanting me to get playing up to scratch as quickly as possible. The news that he'll allow me to disappear for a little while if I felt like it is a pleasant surprise. Grateful for his leniency, I nod, and he smiles in return, striding off to leave me to my practicing. Well, I guess I have no choice but to keep advertising my inadequate piano skills to a room full of better musicians. After going over things several more times, I began to feel a little burnt out from repeating the same thing. Casting an eye up at the clock, I see that there's not too much time left until the end of the club meeting. I guess this is my cue to go talk to Haruka. I start to feel a bit bad for abandoning practice, but Kudo-sensei had explicitly stated that he was okay with me doing this, so I don't really have a reason to feel guilty. Gathering my things together, I make my way across the room. As soon as I enter the calmer atmosphere of the corridor, I seem to become both more relaxed and tense simultaneously. I guess it's a different kind of tension from what I feel around everyone else. I'm still nervous around Haruka, and there's no denying that. It's just that among the awkwardness, there's something that makes me feel a little less on the spot. Well, I know exactly what it is. She can't see. In Haruka's world, I don't even have a face. Oh, what a world that would be. Shaking off my darkening thoughts, I approach the door, knocking to announce myself before heading inside. Haruka has stopped playing at the sound of my knock, as before, and is gazing hesitantly in my direction. Hi, it's me. She seems a little relieved to know who's visiting her. Hi, Kakaru. I wasn't sure if you'd come. Were you practicing? Yeah, Kudo-sensei was helping me with a piece. How are you finding it? I'm not sure whether she's referring to that particular piece or the club as a whole. Both are almost equally overwhelming, though I assume that she means the former. A bit hard. I haven't played piano for years. Haruka seems somewhat intrigued by this statement. So, you started when you were a lot younger then? I nod in confirmation, and then suddenly realize my mistake. You can't nod your way through these conversations, Kakaru. You've got to use your voice with Haruka. Taking a breath, I gear myself up to try to be more talkative. Yeah, I had private lessons. I feel like I've forgotten most of it. She exhales in vague amusement. I don't know the piece either, or many on the club's lists at all. Haruka's face grows inquisitive again. They have a list? I mumble an affirmative noise while taking my backpack from my shoulders to retrieve said list. Haruka listens with interest as I reel off some of the pieces on it. As I speak, her expression brightens, a knowing glint in her eye as if she's quite familiar with a lot of the music I'm mentioning. It makes me feel even more of a failure for not really knowing any. When I finish listing off the pieces, she seems to ponder something for a moment, pausing before she replies. Have you been to the library yet? No. Why? For some reason, the question caught me off guard, not quite sure why the library is suddenly relevant to this situation. Thankfully, Haruka is quick to explain. It has a big sheet music section. You can borrow all sorts of things. Her meaning clicks into place in my mind. I'm guessing that I could probably find the sheet music for everything on this list there. That would make things a little easier. The other members already have theirs and have studied it diligently. Getting my own copies would help me to do the same. I could try reading it at home like I did for my old piano teacher. Ah, you're right. I should go there. She nods, and then looks down at the ground for a second, fidgeting and seeming sheepish. We could go now if you want. She seems quite embarrassed to ask me, and I'm taken aback by the invitation. Is the library still open? I've never really spent any time there, considering that I prefer to spend as much of my school time as possible hiding away from everyone. The library can get pretty crowded. Yes, it stays open quite late to let people study after class. I've been there at this time before. Her face lightens a little as something crosses her mind. It's really quiet around now. She doesn't need to explain why that's something that makes her happy. My favorite type of room is an empty one. The thought of venturing into a basically unknown area of the school is not something I welcome, but considering how most students will have either gone home or still be in their club meetings, it might not be so bad. Better than waltzing in there in the middle of the day. Thinking it over, I acknowledge that I should probably really try to do what I can to improve my playing, since I've joined the club so late, and so out of practice to boot. Alright, do you think Kudo-sensei will mind? We still have a little club time left. He might have been okay with me coming in here, but the two of us abandoning the club to go off somewhere else might be pushing it a bit. Haruka looks conflicted for a moment before seeming to relax. We could always ask. I've left the club to go there before. I'm not entirely convinced that our request will be granted, but I go with it anyway. Okay, let's give it a try. Haruka nods, and I give her a minute to get her belongings together. I almost go to help, but my remaining nerves keep me from moving. I also feel as though I'd probably just get in the way. After donning her school bag and picking up her flute case, her free hand moves towards the piano, feeling for the cane that's propped against it. She finds it quite easily, and I feel momentarily impressed, although she's probably had a lot of practice with it. This is most likely a well-worn routine for her. When she turns to me, she wears an expression that portrays some visible nerves, and I can understand why. Despite the fact that the two of us have had several conversations, we are about to go somewhere together for the first time, while still not knowing each other very well. For her having a disability of this manner, it probably adds a whole heap of worry to it. I'm not sure what to say to comfort her, especially because I'm anxious myself. So I simply open the door for her, chiding my inadequacies as I do so. As we both step out into the corridor, Haruka takes a slow but steady lead. I'm happy to trundle behind her for now, ever unsure of myself. However, as we both join the bustle of the main room, at least half of the faces in the room swivel towards Haruka in surprise, and then to me by extension. I guess they're probably used to never seeing her here. Haruka continues towards Kudo-sensei's desk, and I do my best to tail her sheepishly, twisting my body slightly away from everybody and staring pointedly at the floor as I go. Thankfully, we don't have to try to get Kudo-sensei's attention, as he too turns his head to see what people are glancing at, wearing a similarly surprised look as he stands up. Fujiwara, Akane, this is a surprise. Can I help you with something? My lips part, but no words come out straight away, still silenced by my nerves. To my relief, Haruka speaks for the both of us, the position of her body angled towards the sound of Kudo-sensei's voice. Would it be alright if we went to the library? I can show Akane where to get his sheet music for the group pieces. Her voice comes timidly, and I find myself contemplating her shyness. She can't truly know that any of the other club members are looking at her, but judging by her slightly shaky demeanor, she could still sense it somehow. Kudo-sensei ponders her question for a moment, seeming disapproving at first, but after glancing at the clock and turning the matter over in his head, his expression lightens again. Yes, alright then. I suppose there's not a huge amount of club time left, and it's nice to see you so enthusiastic to learn the pieces, Akane. He directs the last part of his sentence at me, smiling encouragingly, and I avert my eyes, nodding. I'm not sure I'm exactly enthusiastic, but I'm doing it anyway. I'll see you again in the next club meeting. If there's anything you can't find, let me know. I'm sure I'll be able to get hold of a photocopy from somewhere. Haruka and I both bow our heads in thanks and make our way towards the door. Both of our postures hunch slightly in discomfort as we endure a few last interested looks from club members. The atmosphere changes once we get out of the club room, both of us basking in the emptiness of the hallway. Haruka turns to me slightly, seeming less rattled now that we're alone again. That was lucky. Shall we go? I collect myself, recalling her earlier reassurance that the library is quiet at this time of day. Yeah. Okay. I let Haruka go first as we climb the stairs, slowing my pace so that she can take her time. However, as we reach the floor that we need for the library, we end up striding side by side together, and a very unfamiliar feeling comes over me. I've never walked next to a blind person before. I'm not quite sure what to do with myself as I watch Haruka take relatively confident steps, her cane bobbing in front of her to guide her as she navigates the hallway. I almost feel as though I should be helping her out in some way, but strangely, she looks as though she knows exactly what she's doing. So I reel my concerns back in and simply focus on my own walking. I do give her a bit of a wide berth though, just in case I bump into her or something. Considering how awkward and clumsy I am, it wouldn't surprise me. After another minute or so, we reach the large double doors of the library's entrance. This is where Haruka hesitates for the first time since leaving the club room, looking a little unsure of herself. I'm guessing she hasn't come here as much of a regular basis as the other places in school that she's familiar with. I take the initiative and push the doors open, holding it for her. Here. She seems both surprised and glad that I made the first move, thanking me somewhat bashfully and heading inside. I have to admit, I've never really been in here before. I think I came in a couple of times at the start of the first year, but found it too intimidating to keep up. It does feel a lot more inviting this time, though, considering how quiet it is. Haruka had been right about that. The music selection's over there. Catching my attention again, Haruka starts to head towards a section of bookshelves, and I follow her lead. I feel a bit guilty for not replying, having been in a slight daydream, but by the way she relaxes once I reach her side again, I assume that she could tell that I'm there. My footsteps, probably. We take a left down a row of shelves, and then she comes to a halt. Here it is. Glancing at the signs at the end of the rows, I see that there are both sections of sheet music and books about various styles of popular music, too. I hadn't realized that the school put this much of a focus on music. There's a lot here. Yes, I like this part of the library. They have a lot of things for musicians. You can find loads of classical sheet music here for a lot of instruments. She turns slightly, her gaze moving fondly across the spines of the books as though she were actually looking at them. She really does love music. To me, it just looks like another bunch of shelves, the same as the rest of them. But to her, they seem to be a bit more precious. Turning back to me, she pulls herself out of her momentary reverie. Which pieces do you want to look for, then? Feeling a bit foolish, I scramble to retrieve the list from my bag again, realizing that I should have just kept it out. The names of the pieces and composers fill my vision again, just as perplexing as before. There's a Vivaldi one here. 4 Seasons Spring. Haruka's expression shifts in recognition. Oh, that's a really famous one. Well, now I feel even more stupid for not knowing it. I've never even heard of Vivaldi. Undeterred by my lack of reply, Haruka begins to stroll down the rows of books, looking thoughtful. You should find it down this end. It might be near the bottom. I follow her as she leads me down the shelves in alphabetical order, and her certainty strikes me as unusual. How does she know where everything is? I suppose once you know A is, you can guess the rest, but still. I don't think I'll ever get used to this side of her. After perusing the shelves a little longer, I spot the sections sorted by the letter V, crouching down to search for the piece I need. It should be here. I add this as an afterthought, realizing that Haruka probably doesn't realize that I'm essentially on the floor. The last thing she needs is for me to trip her up. She stands behind me while I eye the spines of the books, and thankfully I spy a piano score collection that seems to contain several Vivaldi pieces. After flipping it over to read the back, I see the one that I need is in here. Got it! I stand up again, watching as Haruka smiles in response. Great! What do you want to try and find next? I consult my list again, and we settle on another piece called Gymnopédie? Wow. Gymnopédie number 1 by a composer called Satie. Oh my lord, okay. Gymnopédie number 1 by Satie. Heading back across the room to the right section of the alphabet. As I'm thumbing the books again in search of it, I realize something that causes me to pause for a moment. It's really nice of Haruka to help me like this, even though she can't technically look for the books with me. I take a brief glance over my shoulder at her as she stands there patiently, waiting for me to let her know whether I found it or not. There's no real reason for her to be here, and yet she seems content to accompany me regardless. It's a really kind gesture, not only because of her disability, but also considering how bad her anxiety can be. Accepting the situation with a hint of gratitude as well as a little jab of guilt, I turn my attention back to the shelf in front of me. Gymnopédie, okay? Luckily, this piece is in stock too. It's 2 knocked off the list. I'm a musician, so I feel awful that I don't know that. My bad. Here it is. I think I'll just take these 2 today. Borrowing every piece on this list will probably be too overwhelming for me, for now. I'd probably just stick to a couple until I know them better. Haruka and I make our way to the front desk where an unfortunately awkward conversation ensues. I've never taken anything out of the library before, so I don't really know how to go about it. Plus, I've never met the librarian before either. I should look them up, Lamb. So that doesn't help me get my words out any easier. However, we manage to stumble through it, Haruka still waiting quietly by my side, as though she has all the time in the world. Once my books are checked out and stashed into my backpack, the two of us begin to make our way back down to the ground floor of the school. Club activities ended while we were still in the library, so we're free to go home. When we emerge into the late afternoon light, we both seem to come to a stop simultaneously, unsure of what to do next. I'm going this way. She gestures behind herself, pointing in the opposite direction from the way I need to go. I guess we live in different areas of town. I'm the other way. She nods in acknowledgement, and then an awkward silence falls over us as we both clam up somewhat, having never said goodbye to each other like this. In the past, I've just left her in the music room. Recalling how nice she'd been today for helping me out, I try to put my appreciation into words. My mind doesn't seem to want to work with me, however. Thanks. Good job, Kakaru. Very articulate. Really gets the message across. Haruka doesn't seem fazed by my inadequate mumbling, though. No problem. So, I guess I'll see you tomorrow? Yeah. Okay. Seeming satisfied, she starts to turn away from me, signaling that it's time for us both to part ways for today. Bye, Kakaru. See ya, Haruka. I start striding away down the street, taking a glance back at her. She's walking with as much ease as she had in the corridor earlier. Focusing on the road ahead of me, I take a moment to properly process everything that happened today. I become an official member of the music club. That on its own is astonishing and terrifying in equal measure. I'm sure my parents are going to flip when they find out. In a good way, of course. Then I actually attempted to practice my piano skills, getting some guidance from Kudo-sensei. Nerve-wracking, but I guess I'll get used to it the more I do it. It'll be the main focus of my free practice time after all. Then Haruka took me to the library and showed me where to find the sheet music I needed, going out of her way to help me. That had been unexpected. Even more unexpected, I suddenly realized, is that when she'd asked if she'd see me tomorrow, I'd automatically agreed without a second thought. This is not in my nature. Hell, what am I saying? None of this is in my nature. It's strange how meeting up with Haruka in the little practice room is becoming a regular thing, part of the routine of my everyday school life. I guess the fact that she can't stare ludicrously at my hemangioma goes a long way towards helping me relax around her a bit. Enough to have these little encounters and chats, awkward as they may be. As I continue along the most deserted streets, I contemplate the ethics of the situation. Is it selfish of me to enjoy her inability to see me that much? It sounds like an awful thing to think, as it must be a crippling disability for her. I don't mean anything rude by my thoughts, of course, but it's heavily implied, and that makes me feel pretty bad about myself. The more I think about it, though, the more I realize that, in a way, it probably doesn't matter how I see it. Haruka's blind, and me being around her doesn't change that. I guess it's just a factor of our circumstance. One that benefits me in a certain way, but not because I insist on it. Just because it is what it is. That's what I tell myself, at least, as I pick up speed towards my house in an attempt to ignore the guilt that I'm starting to feel about it. I close the front door behind me softly, kicking off my shoes as usual. I peer around the corner as I cross the room, wondering where my parents are. I catch sight of my dad sitting on the couch, but Mom's nowhere to be seen. All right, son? He nods casually at me, and I return it without meeting his eyes. I'm wanting to get upstairs and begin my usual post-school routine, but before I can make a move, I hear my mother's voice coming from the kitchen. Is that Kakaru? I wait in place, a little disgruntled that my escape attempt has been delayed for now. Mom comes out of the kitchen, a large pair of cooking chopsticks still in her hand. You're a little later today, even with your music club. What have you been up to? Her gaze is inquisitive, and it causes me to bury my own eyeline into the floor. We went to the library. I feel pretty on the spot, but knowing how much they'll appreciate it, I slide my bag from my shoulder, retrieving the 2 books of sheet music I'd acquired with Haruka. For the club. I hold them out for them to see, and it has the effect I thought it might. Both sets of eyebrows raise with interest. You're going to learn these? To play them with others? I could tell from her slightly incredulous tone in her voice that the notion is exciting to her, though she's trying valiantly to hide it. I nod to confirm her assumption, and then realize that I should probably just go ahead and drop the big bombshell that the both of them are probably hoping to hear. The thing that I can't believe I'm about to say. I joined the club. Properly. I could have tried to put it more eloquently, but seems I don't need to. The pair of them start positively beaming with joy at the lackluster announcement, and it makes me cringe even more at the attention. Really? Oh, Kakaru, that's wonderful! Yeah, good job! The 2 of them spend another minute fussing over me, which, to be honest, is mostly just Mom emphasizing how pleased she is, while Dad nods quietly in the background with a grin. It's pretty embarrassing, but as much as I can't wait to get out of their company, there is one thing about it that I appreciate about it. My parents are smiling about me for the first time in God knows how long. Wednesday. We took another science quiz today to demonstrate our progress since the one we had last week. I wasn't too worried about it, being the guy who basically has a textbook attached to his face at all times during class. My mind wandering to the 2 sets of sheet music in the bag, I feel as though the upcoming music club session will prove much more of a problem than the science quiz. Parents approve! Achievement unlocked. I've been reading over the scores at home between episodes of homework and gaming for the last 2 days. I started playing through them a little during free club practice yesterday too. However, this doesn't give me any feelings of confidence about my abilities. Since becoming an official member of the music club, I haven't felt any further sense of belonging. It's still a very uncomfortable, intimidating place for me, and I'm really not sure how much I'll be able to get used to it. However, I do my best to crush these thoughts and push open the door. The room is already pretty full. I make my way straight to the piano after giving Kudo-sensei a curt nod as he smiles at me from his desk. Getting out my sheet music, I almost struggle to fit all 3 pieces on the stand, including the photocopied papers I'd been given on my first day. This hasn't gone unnoticed as Kudo-sensei glances curiously at the books balanced against each other as he strides up to call attention to the group. That's a lot more music than you had the other day. Is this from your recent trip to the library? I nod in reply, sliding the books momentarily out from behind each other so that he could see the titles. From the list. Very good. I think we should focus on those pieces for now then, so you can get a proper feel for them with the ensemble. Speaking of which, he directs his attention to the whole room, announcing the start of club activities and brandishing his conductor's baton, which, yet again, I didn't see him pick up. Does he just keep it in his pocket at all times? Or somewhere else on his person? My demeanor relaxes ever so slightly as I enjoy the amusing image of him walking around school with it constantly up his sleeve, like an ever-prepared classical music wizard. He directs his attention to the whole room, announcing the start of club activities and brandishing his conductor's baton, which yet again I didn't see him pick up. Sadly, the moment isn't to last, as I'm rattled with my reverie by the impending task of trying to perform these pieces that I barely know with the group. Must hit the back button by accident. Placing my hands haphazardly over the keys, I swallow as much of my fear as possible and attempt to do what's expected of me as well as I can. This isn't good. I'm doing my best to try and keep up with everyone, but these two new pieces are just as difficult for me as the other two had been. I may have been able to study the sheet music, but so far it's not really giving me the advantage that I thought it might. It doesn't help that I don't really know these pieces at all. The Vivaldi one is starting to ring a bell, probably something I've heard once before somewhere, but since I'm struggling to play my parts, I can't really figure out how it's supposed to sound. The Sadie one, I have no clue. It's slow and it gives me a few more milliseconds to remember which notes come next, but that's about the extent of what I gain from it. I'm really not feeling good about myself right now. Alright, let's go back to Vivaldi. I really need you to emphasize that sprightly spring feeling, not so legato on the cellos, and give us some bounce in that first half, everyone. This is the hardest one. I grudgingly pull the Vivaldi sheet music back to the front of my stand, taking the few seconds I have to look over the troublesome bars and try and get them reabsorbed into my head. The main section isn't too bad, but there's a tough bit towards the middle, and I have to play the lead part. My fingers just trip over each other every time I try it. With no choice but to give it another go, I rest my hands on the keys and wait nervously for the cue to play. Kudo-sensei counts us in, and we begin, performing as one unit. However, after the introductory section is over and the twiddly, more flamboyant middle part comes in, the instruments start to pull away from each other as their owners grow less sure of themselves. A couple of the violinists seem to tread on each other's metaphorical feet as they try to enunciate their separate overlapping parts, which then throws me off even further. When I come in with my elaborate part, I'm pretty sure I'm already offbeat from the first note, and the fingers on my right hand almost start to cramp up as I try and force them to perform a complex dance across the keys. It's not even really a difficult part. I just can't get my hands to play what my eyes are reading yet. Somehow, I refrain from fainting in embarrassment and bumble through the rest of the piece, releasing a ragged breath that I hadn't realized I'd been holding when it finally comes to a close. This is too intense for me, man. Kudo-sensei looks around at everyone, regarding us with a mixture of dissatisfaction and optimism. A little better on the cellos. That middle section needs to be much more precise, but you can all focus on that during free practice. Think less about what other people are playing and get your own parts really locked in. He casts across the room, looking for the clock. Alright, go ahead and practice. If anyone needs any further guidance, just give me a shout. The room bursts into a flurry of activity, the large group breaking down into smaller friendship groups, and the two violinists who'd been struggling earlier grab Kudo-sensei straight away, eagerly wanting his help. My eyes move up to take in the sheet music again, but I can't summon enough enthusiasm to tear my hands from my lap. I'm not enjoying the music club at all. At least not today. Leaning back on the stool and sighing at the futility of it all, the voice in my head chips in once more with some unhelpful advice. Leave. I guess I could. Kudo-sensei can't exactly tackle me to the ground and chain me to the piano if I just try to go home. For a moment, I glanced towards the door, the sight of it making my potential departure even more tempting. However, something triggers in the back of my mind. A memory of something I said yesterday, like I have for the last couple of days. I'll see you tomorrow, Haruka. I did it again. I told her that I'd be here without thinking about it, as if it was as much a part of my day as brushing my teeth or doing my homework. Then again, it wasn't exactly a promise. I could still just leave. No. As much as I want to just hightail it out of here and get back to the comfort of my room, the little conscience I have left inside me prevents me from doing so. It's bad enough that I'm skipping free practice, the most important part of club activities for me. I should at least say hi to Haruka like I said I would. Looking guiltily across at Kudo-sensei, I see that he's still coaching the violinists, his attention fully on them as he leans across to point at something on their sheet music. Seeing that my exit will go unnoticed, I stuff my own books inside my bag and stride swiftly across the room, mumbling a silent apology in my head and ducking out so shamelessly. Hopefully, once I'm away from the noise at least, I'll be a little bit less stressed out. Knocking on the door first, as is becoming the norm in this situation, I enter slowly. In contrast to my mood, which seems to be getting lower by the moment, Haruka greets me with her usual quiet, yet somewhat lighthearted hello. How did the group practice go today? Not great. I don't look at her, but I could still sense a slight shift in her expression. That's a shame. What happened? The pieces are hard. I haven't gotten used to them yet. Out of the corner of my eye, I see her nod in acknowledgement. It must be tough playing with everyone else. I guess of all people, she'd be the one to best understand why it's difficult for me. It still doesn't stop me feeling sorry for myself, though. Even though I'm trying to improve my outlook, it doesn't seem to be working. I guess it's just one of those days. I feel a little guilty, realizing that I've been standing in silence for a while, not giving Haruka anything to interact with or reply to. But just as I'm trying to come up with something to say, she speaks again. Was it Four Seasons Spring or Gymno... That you were playing? The ones we got the other day. I nod, catching myself again and cursing my own stupidity internally. I'm glad she can't see the way I roll my eyes at myself for the fact that I keep doing this. Yeah. There's a small pause before she pipes up again. I know some of the lead lines for those. We could try playing them together if you want. Surprised by her sudden offer, I raise my head, looking at her properly for the first time since I walked in here. She seems both bashful and hopeful as she faces my direction. It's nice of her to offer to help me, but I feel like playing one-on-one with her would be pretty embarrassing. At my lack of reply, she starts to turn red, balling her hands into little fists. You don't have to. I just thought it might, help a bit without the others. She contemplates the floor out of shyness, though she can't see it. It makes me feel bad for potentially making it seem as though I don't want her help. It's true that I'm not really in the mood to practice anymore today, but at the same time, well, maybe playing with her might not be so bad. In the other room, there are so many people to judge me for my lackluster performance, especially Kudo-sensei. In here, there's only one. And I'm willing to bet that she wouldn't be too offended by my lack of skills since she's pretty understanding. Taking a breath and trying to keep my mind open, I cave in. Okay, we can try it. Haruka visibly relaxes at my words, seeming relieved. All right, which one do you want to do first? She turns towards her sheet music stand, her right hand wavering slightly in the air until it finds one of the straps of her bag sitting on the nearby chair. Maybe the Sadie one. Might as well start with the easier piece. Haruka nods, fumbling with her bag for a moment before procuring a rather large folder from it. It looks as though it takes up almost all of the bag's space. She flicks through the pages until she finds what she wants, pulling out her own sheet music for Gymnopedy number 1 and places it on the stand. Busying myself with setting at the piano and attempting to collect my thoughts, I don't bother to even question how a blind person learns and reads music. It's probably too complicated for me to process right now. Reading through the notes, rests, and other performance directions once more, I'm filled with a similar sense of dread to the one I'd felt the other room, although there is less pressure in this situation. After a minute, I hear Haruka take a deep breath in and out, preparing herself to play the flute. Shall we give it a try? I guess I have nothing to lose. All right. We play through the piece together. It's a strange experience going from a rendition by a mini orchestra to just two people. I still understand where we are in the piece though, and Haruka is nice enough to slow the tempo down considerably so that I have more time to think about what I'm doing on the fly. Tension is still seizing up my shoulders as I play, but it's not quite as bad as it had been before. I can get through it without my heart thundering. When the piece comes to an end, I glance at Haruka. She still has her eyes closed, a habit she seems to have when she plays the flute. After a moment, she opens them again, tilting her head in the direction of the piano. Was that any easier? A little. The corners of her mouth turn upward slightly. I don't mind doing it again, or trying the other one. We're feeling somewhat pitiful, as though she's pandering to me. I agree regardless, figuring that I should make an effort to practice in some way, considering that I abandoned working on my own. The two of us continue to play through the two pieces with the time we have left. The experience is still quite disheartening due to the fact that I'm just not confident in my abilities at all. However, I blunder through it out of guilt, and Haruka continues to be patient with me, despite how easy the pieces must seem to her. When I see that it's almost time to leave, I let her know, and we have one last run-through of the piece we're focusing on before packing up our things. I finish putting my sheet music away pretty quickly, with nothing else to do. I watch Haruka as she closes her bag, detaching the various pieces of her flute and slotting them into their designated parts of her case. Do you feel any better about things now? I don't want to make her feel as though her assistance was pointless, so I put it a little more optimistically than I feel. A bit. The slower tempo was good. That actually did help somewhat, if only the group were okay with playing everything at the speed of a funeral march. I just don't know the pieces well enough yet, I guess. It's still a huge factor. If I'd already been familiar with them, this would be a lot easier. Clicking the buckles of her flute case shut, Haruka turns back towards me thoughtfully. I know you said you hadn't been to the library much, but have you seen the CD room? Evidently not. Nothing comes to mind. No. It's at the back of the library. It has a stereo system and loads of CDs that you can check out like books. I bet they'd have those pieces there if you wanted to hear them properly. I'm quiet for a few minutes as I take in the information. The school really does have a lot of resources for musicians, and I hadn't realized the extent of it all. Naturally, considering how I lived my life before I got involved with this club, it's no wonder I hadn't noticed. I didn't know. I might check it out. If I could borrow CDs with the pieces on, enabling me to hear them as they're supposed to be whenever I like, it would certainly help me figure out my own parts when I play. As I ponder this, I notice that Haruka looks a little angsty again, the blush creeping back into her cheeks. We could always go together. I love listening to music. The bell rings out across the school, announcing the end of the club time, causing me to pause before I reply. Another invitation. This is getting to be something of a regular occurrence. Contemplating it for a moment, I realize that it's probably not a good idea for the two of us to repeatedly skip free practice in order to go to the library. Kudo-sensei had let it slide the first time, but I don't think he'll appreciate us swanning off again to listen to music instead of playing it. I tell Haruka as much and her face drops slightly. You're right. I didn't think of that. The two of us linger for a moment, slightly disgruntled that Haruka's good idea couldn't be put into action. Then, remembering that the bell has already rung, we pick ourselves up and start making our way outside. We walk side by side again, the concept slightly easier for me, now that I've done it before. I still make sure I'm not too close to Haruka, though, just in case. I rack my brain, trying to think of a way to convince Kudo-sensei to excuse us so that we can go to the CD room tomorrow. But before I can drum up any solid suggestions, Haruka offers one of her own. If it's not any trouble, we could always go to the library at lunch. The hairs on the back of my neck momentarily bristle at the thought. The library must be pretty busy during lunchtime, and the mental image of the desks crowded with students makes me shudder. Won't it be busy? I've been there before. Hardly anyone uses the CD room anymore. We round the corner, making our way through the banks of lockers in the entryway and out into the afternoon sun. I still haven't answered Haruka yet, but my whirling thoughts make it difficult. I do the same thing every day at lunchtime. Dash away from class as soon as the bell rings, bolt down the school fields towards my favorite bench, and enjoy my food in blissful silence. It's my one solace in my routine otherwise fraught with stress. If we go to the library, I try to shake off the growing feeling that I'm being threatened. This is what happens when my daily rituals are thrown off balance or taken away from me. I find myself huffing at an attempt to do some sort of calm breathing and realize that Haruka can probably tell how wound up I am all of a sudden. We come to a stop once we reach the road at the point where we need to go our separate ways. Haruka faces my direction with concern on her face. I'm sorry if I shouldn't have asked. Damn it! My discomfort must be clear as day, and now it's made her feel guilty for something she shouldn't. No, it's okay. Straightening up, I begin to reason with myself. Importantly, I'll be able to get audio copies of the pieces on my own by doing this. It might really help me out in my struggle to learn this. As well as this, Haruka had only suggested it because she wanted to lend me a hand. She's not demanding anything from me. She said that no one uses the CD room anymore. It might be deserted, as quiet as the library had been when we looked for the sheet music. That wouldn't be so bad. I should be able to deal with that, shouldn't I? Glancing up at her uncomfortable expression, I'm hit with another pang of shame as I see how strongly she thinks she's upset me. I don't want to make her feel like that. She was kind enough to show me the music section of the library, then practice pieces she didn't need to play so that I could get a better feel for them. And now this. The least I could do is be grateful and take her up on it. I think we should go. Haruka looks up at the sound of my voice, seeming tense, but then her expression changes. Okay. Maybe tomorrow when lunch starts? I let my inhibitions slide, knowing that I can just enjoy a full normal lunch period the day after. All right. Haruka seems pleased with my answer, her shoulders relaxing. Shall we meet outside the library doors? We can go to the CD room straight away. I'm sure we'll be the only ones in there. Her confidence of the fact calms my nerves a little. Okay, I guess I'll see you then. She nods, looking considerably more cheery than she had before. Bye, Kakaru. She turns away, heading down the road towards whichever part of town she lives in, and I do the same. As I turn our conversation over in my head again, I find myself kind of shocked that I actually agreed to buck my usual trends even more than the music club already does. However, I can't ignore how considerate Haruka is being, especially with her nerves being as shaky as they must be. Like mine. That's what made me change my mind. I agreed to it now. The CD room had better be good. And save. That slot. Yes. Perfect. That was day 2 of Venus Improbable Dream. This is the game that I will be playing on Sundays from now until it's complete. Thanks, Lamb, for being here. I will try my hardest to learn how to pronounce Sadie as gymnopody. I'll try and figure out how to pronounce that by the next stream. So, yeah. I'll be back next Sunday with this, and in the meantime, I will be back on Tuesday to play... I actually know the name of it, I think. Sea Horizon. All right. Sounds like fun. On behalf of East Asia Soft, I have been Skull. Have yourselves a great day and a great week. I'll bring a whole lot more water next time so I know how to actually talk. Yes, absolutely, Liam. We'll get through this together. We'll help Haruka achieve her dream. In this house, we stand Haruka. Have yourselves a great day and a great week, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.